We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H.
Carl. Carl is living in a townhouse where he doesn't want to bother his neighbors. He ends up using mostly his Marshall Major 2 headphones, what those are, which he can use wirelessly with an aptX Bluetooth adapter. He does have an Onkyo SKX HT240 5.1 home theater in the box. That's why I didn't recognize any of those letters. But he isn't totally satisfied with the sound. I don't blame you. His setup is an open concept great room that totals about 3,800 cubic feet. And the home theater in the box isn't cutting it for you? I can't imagine why. And if you were going to start spending money, he'd definitely start with subwoofers. Not if you don't want to bother your neighbors, but here we go. He's really questioning whether it's worth spending a bunch of money upgrading his speaker system. If he wants to do it, he'd do it in stages and eventually wind up with an Atmos system. But he can only watch things at a loud volume during the middle of the day. On the other hand, the speaker system sounded a lot better than his current one. Maybe be able to enjoy it more, even at a lower volume. So the first step is to convince him whether it's all worth it, or should he just continue primarily with headphones. Okay, what we don't know, and I need to know, is how easy is it to bother your neighbors. Now,
Yeah.
that's what it really kind of comes down to. If your neighbor, like okay, when I was in college, there were, I was an undergrad, there was a group of guys that I knew, and they would throw parties all the time, and they would have these huge booming speakers. First THX receiver I ever saw in the wild, one of these guys owned. He wouldn't let the other guys use it, but he owned it in a box up in his room, and he wouldn't let anybody touch it. It was really weird. But they had a surround sound. The very first time I ever experienced surround sound was at this guy's apartment, Jurassic Park, booming at 1 billion decibels, right at 11 o'clock at night on a school night, that sort of thing. They had neighbors next door, never said a thing. They moved apartments within the same apartment complex. Their new neighbors, literally the devil. I mean, we were, like, after 9 p.m., you had to whisper in their apartment, because if you did anything more than whisper, they called the cops on you. So,
Yeah.
What is the tolerance of your neighbors to being bothered? We have to know that before I think this question can adequately be answered. Now, clean sound is much better than distorted sound, just in general. I mean, I think that goes without saying. But what it means is that you can turn something up a little bit louder, and it's not going to have that distortion, that screeching, that whatever is wrong with it. It also means very good speakers will be able to play lower, volume-wise, and still sound much better than speakers that are poor. So if you have really poor home theater in a box speakers, which you may have, I tend to like, if I'm going to get an Onkyo, a home theater box, I like Onkyos because they usually give you a fully fledged receiver that you can plug other speakers into. I don't know if that's the case with this one, but most of them you can. So upgrading your speakers will allow you to enjoy them at lower levels, I believe. You will have more intelligibility. It will sound better. It will sound cleaner overall. Now, will that be enough of an upgrade for you? I don't know. But if your first upgrade option is subwoofers, that's what you're going for. I gotta believe that your neighbors, aren't that bothered by noises, because if so, then you're gonna buy subwoofers that you are literally never gonna use, except for those times in the middle of the day when nobody's around. And even then, who knows? They could be the crazy type that call the cops in the middle of the day. So, I got to know about these neighbors. I have to know a little bit more about these neighbors. And it could very well be that, I don't know about your headphones, but if you're really looking for a good upgrade in sound and you don't want to even risk the whole neighbor thing, getting yourself a nice pair, I got a nice pair of headphones, like some Audeze or the Oppo magnetic planar speakers, or some of the high-end Sennheisers and that sort of stuff, like some really good ones, and then a bass shaker for your couch can maybe get you through what you're living, until you're able to really super upgrade, and you just save your money, and then afterwards you're like, and I've got a great pair of headphones for the rest of my life, and I'm going to die with these things.
Yeah.
I think that might be a good like middle ground if these neighbors are as horrible as they could possibly be.
Yeah, it's really tough to say. Like, I don't know if he's wanting for us to convince him that this is the way to go, but I would like to agree that if you get a really nice pair of headphones, in addition to that, you could get the Smyth Realiser. And Smyth Realiser, they're bringing out their new A16 model, which actually does Atmos and DTS-X all through headphones. And it does it super convincingly because you actually put microphones in your own ears and calibrate it to real live speakers so that you get your specific head related transfer function. It's unique to you. This isn't some generic head related transfer function that's trying to give you pseudo surround sound from headphones. This is the real deal. It genuinely works because it's measuring inside of your own ears. And then it also puts a positional head tracker onto your headphones so that when you turn your head, it's as though you have stationary speakers. It's an extremely convincing effect inside of headphones. Now, it's not a cheap device. It's $1,500, but he's talking about spending close to $2,000 just on subs.
Yeah.
So I don't think the money in and of itself is the entire problem. It seems as though he has the budget to do this, maybe didn't consider it, but honestly, if you want something that does super convincing Atmos in a way that your neighbors are never going to hear because it's coming through headphones, a Smyth Realiser could do that for you. So I want to throw that out there because I think this might be a solution.
Idea. That's not a bad idea. I mean, like I said, if you really don't want to bother your neighbors and you're thinking at some point in the future, like if you're never planning on moving, well then you need to figure out how you can live with these people and have the kind of the best home theater experience you can actually have. And that might be just a pair of headphones. Now, he does say if he does start down the speaker upgrade path, he'd like dual subwoofers, but they need to be small in size. I'm scrolling up again. What did he say about his room? He says,
yeah, he's got
3,800 cubic feet.
100 cubic feet.
Yeah, that's a couple of cubic feet. Sorry, I got to scroll back down. But they need to be small in size. He really likes the dimensions of the Rhythmic F8. He also likes that they're able to play higher since his current speakers require a very high crossover frequency. What do we think about this dual 8-inch driver sub? I think it's a fairly horrible choice for your room. Can I say that? Can I say that? Can I say that? I think this is a terrible choice. Even
by Rhythmic's own measurements, they start with their F12 as their baseline, which it's a sealed 12-inch 500-watt sub, so that's very much akin, if you're looking, say, in the SVS line, it'd be very much akin to like an SB-2000. It's that type of sub. And the F12, I mean, it wouldn't be a terrible choice for this room size. It's probably not what we would say would fully pressurize this room size, but you're probably not aiming for 115 dB anyway if you have neighbors who get bothered. So that wouldn't be a bad choice. Rhythmic says the F8 plays about 1.5, 2 decibels quieter than the F12. So would it be a horrible choice? Wouldn't be a horrible choice. It wouldn't be the choice I would pick for this room size. For most people. And if you're eventually going to be moving to a space where you could go full bore, it might be a little bit underpowered. If what you're after is a small footprint, I've got to say cylinder again, right?
Well, either cylinder or you got to start spending some real money. That's what it kind of comes down
to go really small and really loud.
Yeah, JL audio or something like that, where you can get something that's still got a small footprint and puts out incredible amounts of power.
Right. But that's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. You're talking like 10, 20 grand or whatever it is for their higher end ones.
Yeah, like the PC-2000 cylinder subs from SVS are less expensive than the F8.
Yeah.
And their footprint isn't much bigger. So to me, the cylinder makes more sense here.
I think it's because it's a great room sort of thing. I mean, what I'm really worried about here more than anything, I guess, is you having, like, most of the time, I don't think you're going to have a problem with this. You're not going to play them that loud. You're not looking to pressurize a room. They're just going to give you some bass. I'm okay with you getting those. But what I'm afraid might happen is you might end up with a sub that you at some point in the future say to yourself, oh, well, you know, the neighbors aren't home. They're out for the weekend and it's movie night and I'm going to watch Jurassic Park. And then the next day you have subs that no longer function. I am a little concerned about that. I mean, I am, because it could very well happen. You know, I would rather buy the sub for my room and then not play it very loud than not buy the sub for my room. And if it really comes down to this smaller size, if it's an aesthetic thing, consider spending a little bit more money and getting something that can fill this room with space, or just realize the limitations of the sub and never push them too hard. I mean, those are kind of your options.
Yeah. But given that what we're suggesting is actually less expensive, which isn't often the case, but it is in this instance, then it makes it a little bit easier to swallow when we're actually saying spend less money and still get more. So.
Yeah. Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.